And I'll start with the famous quote that people will often use on online resources to sum up his phenomenalism. Matter, then, may be defined a permanent possibility of sensation. If I am asked whether I believe in matter, I ask whether the questioner accepts this definition of it. If he does, I believe in matter. In any other sense than this, I do not. But I affirm with confidence that this conception of matter includes the whole meaning attached to it by the common world, apart from philosophical and sometimes from theological theories. So his point and his whole attitude is a bit logical positivist, even though he was prior to that movement. He's trying to say that these permanent possibilities of sensation have been reified into a kind of stuff with an absolute solidity. So now he goes on to say, the reliance of mankind on the real existence of visible and tangible objects means reliance on the reality and permanence of possibilities of visual and tactual or tactile sensations when no such sensations are actually experienced. We are warranted in believing that this is the meaning of matter in the minds of many of its most esteemed metaphysical champions, though they themselves would not admit as much. So Mill, as I see it, is offering a minimal explication of material, physical, empirical objects. So instead of projecting some mysterious absolute solidity, he is suggesting a conception of the objects between us in terms of possibility. Now, he is focusing on visual and tactile manifestation because this is what I think the science of his time mostly relied upon. I would say, trying to update Mill, that the object is completely qualitative, that all of the qualitative resonance or radiance of the object should be appreciated and included. But for rhetorical reasons, he's going to focus on properties associated with primary qualities of the object. And then he's trying to say that many people who want to defend the concept of matter, he thinks without them really being aware of it, this is really the essence of what they're trying to assert. That indeed the objects are between us, material, physical, empirical objects, they are between us, but they are between us as possibilities of their perceptual manifestation. Now he uses the word sensation, which is somewhat old-fashioned and of course part of the empirical tradition. I would say that trying to divide the object into a concept and the sensation that it organizes, that would be itself a bit of a philosopher's fiction. But still, you see that Mill definitely finds the objects between us. These are interpersonal possibilities. Okay, so later in the paper, Mill is going to further explicate material, physical, or empirical objects. Try to explain how the theory of matter, how this projection of absolute solidity could arise in the first place. Let me first restate what I apprehend the belief in matter to be. We believe that we perceive a something closely related to all our sensations, but different from those which we are feeling at any particular minute, and distinguished from sensations altogether by being permanent and always the same, while these sensations are fugitive, variable, and alternately displace one another. But these attributes of the object of perception are properties belonging to all the possibilities of sensation which experience guarantees. So, yes, the object is not any particular sensation or perception of it, but you might say, from a later aspect theory point of view, that the object is a cloud of aspects. So if you try to rip off a particular sensation or perception of the object, and if you make that your thematic focus, then of course we do not identify any sensation with the object itself. These concepts have different roles in the space of meaning. But what is the object if not this standing open possibility of sensation? Do we need to project more than this possibility? Is the object more than an expectation of manifestation? If the object is absent right now in a perceptual sense, and I say that the object exists, and I use exist as an empirical predicate, unlike a unicorn, there's a horse in the barn down the street. What am I saying? And for Mill, I'm saying that if, conditionally, if I go to that barn, I will perceive the horse will be perceptually or sensationally manifest. And this would be a demystification of the projection of some kind of absolute solidity. So the horse, in some sense, is not more than perceptions or manifestations of the horse, but the horse cannot be simply identified with any particular manifestation. So the horse is a kind of open system of possible perceptions. So Mill goes on to say that this is the minimal explication. The belief in such permanent possibilities seems to me to include all that is essential or characteristic in the belief in substance. Essential or characteristic. And that's what I mean by a minimal explication. This is the essence, he would say, of our belief in substance, in what we would call the true physical being of the object. So he's demystifying a projection of absolute solidity. And this also means this is an attack to some degree on indirect realism, because if you say that the matter or the stuff of the object is radically other than its manifestation to perception, then you're basically implying that perception is a translation, that perception has nothing to do with the true being of the object. And I think the problem of that for an empirical thinker like Mill is that is quasi-theological. It would be an indulgent metaphysical speculation. So here he uses the city Calcutta, and that's an old name for a city that has been renamed since. But he says that I believe that Calcutta exists, and this I would say is an empirical predication. It exists like a horse, but not like a unicorn, which would exist only as a figment of the imagination. So he believes that Calcutta exists, which is of course on the other side of the world. Mill, I believe, is in England when he is writing this. Even though Calcutta is not perceptually present for him, he still believes that it exists. And he even believes that it would still exist if every percipient inhabitant were suddenly to leave the place or be struck dead. And this kind of ties into my attempt to react to Mayasu's speculative realism. But when I analyze the belief that Calcutta, exists empirically, all I find in it is this: that were these events to take place, the annihilation of every percipient inhabitant, the permanent possibility of sensation, which I call Calcutta, would still remain. And here we get some more of the conditional understanding of empirical objects associated with phenomenalism. That if I were suddenly transported to the banks of the Hooghly, a river near Calcutta, I should still have the sensations which, if now present, would lead me to affirm that Calcutta exists here and now. So Calcutta, even if no one's looking at it, still exists as a standing open possibility of perceptual manifestation. So this also clearly separates him from Berkeley, who needed to invoke a god who would keep looking at objects to maintain their existence. So you might say that Berkeley identifies the object with its perceptual manifestation, but Mill sees that really objects, as between us, are much better thought of as possibilities, as clouds of aspects, as I would say, trying to enrich and develop Mill's thinking. So the object can be signitively present from a distance. It doesn't have to be perceptually present for anyone now for it to exist as a standing open possibility.